Alloy in Myerstown. I just kind of threw this in because it was sort of a different situation. Now, of course, everybody knows about the Lebanon Steel Foundry. That did castings as well. But Quaker Alloy got into production of quality steel, nickel, Monel copper nickel, and Hastelloy type castings, which some of that I'm not sure exactly what that is, and I have to go into great research to find out what that means. But the Lebanon Steel Foundry did some of that as well. Quaker remained in business well into the 1980s, but sold to a firm from Kansas, who later filed for bankruptcy in the mid-2000s, and I'm not sure that facility still operates, although I've been told it does, but not under the Quaker Alloy name, of course. We'd be remiss if we didn't mention Lebanon Bologna, of course. That is one of our claims to fame here in the county, and thanks to Chris Shawley a few years ago, she actually published a history. Well, she wrote a history for her master's thesis. Yes, there's Mr. Lebanon Bologna. And she approached us and wanted to know if we wanted to publish it as one of our publications, and she donated it to us, which I really appreciate that, certainly. Of course, Bologna production, if you read her book, did have a long history here. 1902, Harvey Seltzer and his friend Felix Burkholder joined forces and established the Palmyra Bologna Company at 230 North College Street, Palmyra. The reason why I picked them out is they're still owned by the Seltzer family. I think Craig Seltzer is the one that runs the business at this point. There is Weaver's Bologna, which was a little bit older, 1885, but I think that's gone through some ownerships, of course. Anyway, Mr. Seltzer, the original Mr. Seltzer, came into the business himself then after Mr. Burkholder sold his share in the business. He probably, if Mr. Burkholder would be here, he'd probably say, "Darn, I shouldn't have done that." But anyway. Smoking of the Bolognas at Seltzer's is done the old-fashioned way with the wooden smokehouses. They're very fortunate because the government has changed things over the years, and if you want to go into Bologna production today, you clearly would not be able to do that anymore. So Seltzer's has been so-called grandfathered, and that really, I think, is what makes their Bologna taste very good. There was a brick factory in Mount Gretna, we know. How long it lasted, we're not sure, but the bricks themselves have an MT period with a G. And so we basically have an installment downstairs. It's basically the jail exhibit, and most of the bricks down there that were used were the Mount Gretna bricks. So I wanted to bring that to your attention, and we do have a series of photographs of that facility that was at Mount Gretna. So kind of interesting. Another business in the county that we were well known for at one point was shoes. There were a number of different shoe manufactories in Lebanon County. The unfortunate part is we don't have much physical evidence in our collection of the shoe industry. So I just had Tina pull out a pair of shoes just so I can talk about this. But of course, shoes like that, isn't that nice? It's not China. That wouldn't be or dynamite, yeah. The shoe industry here in Lebanon County started in the late 19th century, including the Landis and H.L. Kreider firms at Palmyra, the A.S. Kreider at Annville, the North Lebanon Shoe, North Lebanon Township, and the Curtis and Jones Shoe Company at Richland. The earliest known business was the Palmyra Boot and Shoe Company, which was established in 1886. Fortunately, the business was a failure. But Jacob Landis, who was a large stockholder in that particular company, purchased the venture himself and began operating under the name of J. Landis Sons Shoe Company. If you're familiar with Chestnut Street in Palmyra, the large Landis shoe facility is still there. It was turned into a housing complex back in the 70s, late 70s, early 80s. They actually merged with the Kinney Shoe Corporation, and they continued to operate until 1991 in the facility across from the Northside School. Kreider Shoe Company in Palmyra remained in the same family's hands from 1891 until 1988 when Kenneth Kreider decided to close the firm due to foreign competition, unfortunately. But they did have a store in Palmyra you could go to, Kreider's, to buy shoes that were made right at the plant in Palmyra. I don't know if there are any, other than the North Lebanon Shoe, I don't know if there are any other shoe companies right in this vicinity. But the North Lebanon Shoe used to be out beyond where Marty Shoe's Museum, the brewery, and a number of years ago that caught fire and burned down. I think it was Deptford Manufacturing after that, and that building burned, so we don't have a representation of that building anymore. The Kreider Shoe, the original shoe factory, was in very bad shape, and that just finally this year came down. That was across from the old train station in Atlanta. So now that's gone from the scene.